Anybody who has questions later on, remember to talk directly into the top of the microphone and hold it close to your mouth. Thank you.
Okay. Sure. All right. Okay. All right, everybody, thanks for showing up. My name is Radman. Or my actual name is Christian, where you may know me better as Radman. Let's see, in 1990, I started a group called Acid, which is an ANSI art group. They're now defunct as of 2004. So we operated for almost a decade and a half creating artwork from characters. So what I'm going to be showing today is different forms of art built from letters, numbers, characters that you'd find on a typewriter and such. I'm going to start off with some really early examples of this. Maybe. All right, let's see. All right. Prior to computer-based ASCII art, we have examples of art created in created from shaped text, dating as far back as 304 BC. What you're looking at right here is a Roman Latin poem by Marcus Tullius Cicero, and this is over 2,000 years old. We also have shaped poems that started to show up in the 1600s. This is a poem called The Altar. It's a religious poem here. We also started to see concrete poetry show up in publishing such as Alice in Wonderland. This is an 1865 novel, and at the end of the chapter, we have this tale here, and the sentence begins, "It is a long tale, certainly," and to kind of convey that, he forms the rest of the text in a tale, in the shape of a tale. Okay. This is one of the most earliest typewriters here. This is the first QWERTY keyboard typewriter, and it's fashioned after a sewing machine. So you can see it's very decorative. At the time that this came out, it wasn't fashionable to have what later became the typewriter in your home, so they made it kind of look like this work of art here. So it's very decorative. Typewriters also created opportunities for women in the workplace. I don't know how that got in there. And it also created these kind of, there's a lot of, the way that they marketed the typewriters, they were marketing them to the businessmen. So I'm sure there was a lot of sexual harassment lawsuits later down the road. What you're looking at here is a Corona folding typewriter. This is kind of the precursor to a laptop. This literally folds in half inside of this briefcase here. What we're going to go into now is typewriter art. The very first example that we have of typewriter art dates back to 1898. It's the first preserved example. This was entered into a typewriter speed typing contest. And so they started to have these, in a way to promote typewriters and how fast they could type without jamming. Typewriter manufacturers had speed typing contests to say that our brand's the best. And then they also started to have typewriter art contests on the side, and these kind of became somewhat popular as well. And so this is the first preserved example of that. You can't see it really well, but Actually, I should just use this. But they use, X's and O's here for the framework, and here they're using the lines. And one thing that you can do with a typewriter that you can't do on a terminal or a computer is you can shift the orientation of the paper. So you can take more advantage of what the typewriter can do. This is another example from the mid-1900s by Dennis Collins. This particular person he's done typewriter portraits for like the Queen of England. Here's a close-up of that. So you can see exactly what he's using for the densities of the image to achieve the shading. You can see that he's using an overstrike technique, which is also not possible on a computer. So to get really dark shading, he's able to put a W on top of an M there and go back over it. This is one of my favorite examples of typewriter art. This was drawn by Paul Smith. The reason why, there's a couple reasons why I really like this. First of all, he uses, a lot of typewriters eventually started to have two-colored ribbons, or multicolored ribbons. This has the black and the red ribbon. So he used that for the brick tiling of the house. If you look really closely, you can see that the trees are made out of M's. But what I find, he also uses a smudge technique, which is also something you can't achieve on a computer. But what I really like about this, or what I really find most interesting about this, is that Paul Smith had cerebral palsy, and so he was unable to communicate. His only means of communication was through a typewriter. So if he wanted to convey a message, he had to very painstakingly steady one hand with the other and type one key at a time in order to get each key press. So his artwork was truly a labor of love because this was something that would take days and weeks to complete. But it was it was his main means of communication. He later decided that he wanted to orientate his room and have a cabinet situated around his typewriter and redecorate things. So he actually drafted a blueprint with his typewriter of how he wanted this desk to look, and then later it was built, which is pretty amazing. Paul Smith is still alive today. He's in a nursing home, and he's still continuing this typewriter art. Okay. Other places that text-based artwork started to show up was with the teletype. And this is kind of a precursor to the BBS, because now what we're seeing is, rather than somebody stationary designing text-based artwork in their house, they're able to actually communicate with other people and send and transmit this artwork to somebody else. The very first evidence of teletype art starts to show up in the early 1900s, 1920s. The story is, that's been passed on by RIDI artists later on down the road, is that teletype art started to show up when people were bored during the Christmas hours, and they were monitoring the telegraph wires. They still had to work there. It's kind of like working at a network operations center over the weekend or something. You have nothing to do. So, they would send messages, transmit messages to each other, and eventually they started to transmit pictures, which became more and more elaborate over time. This is an example of radio teletype art. And it's a perfect example. It's something that would very easily translate into ASCII as well. There's no overstriking here at all. Okay. So, as I mentioned before, RIDI artists, they started to show up in the 1960s after they sort of received FCC approval to do this, to use the radio for other means. This is a very complex example of RIDI art sent over ham radio. This was done by Don Royer sometime in the 1970s. And this is actually 4 printed panels. So this would be sent from one teletype machine to another at a rate of about 45 to 70 baud. This is like 1,200 times slower than a standard connection. And So, I mean, literally this would take, 30, 40 minutes per page, and if there was an error, there was no error correction. They'd have to start over and say, hey, this line was messed up, or this was all messed up. So, I mean, this could take hours to receive from somebody else, but this is 4 printed out pages put together. Not surprisingly, most ham radio operators were men, and so they like to, they had an interest in this as well. This is Miss December, 1966. Gotta wonder how old she is now. But anyways, this image, as you can see, I have the actual centerfold here, and it's almost identical. It should be noted that the radio teletype operators, they were able to sort of trace. They could put tracing paper on top of the actual centerfold and run it through the machine, type over it, and then clean up the tape, run it through like 6 or 7 passes, and get it to look almost exactly like the original. And so they were kind of acting as human scanners, basically. Okay. In the 70s, we started to see a really rapid shift to the video display terminal. And this kind of introduced some new options as far as text-based art goes, as well as some limitations. But one of the things that you could do with a terminal that you couldn't do with, say, like a typewriter or something is you could have animation. We'll see if it works. So this is a very early VT100 ASCII animation. In the 1980s, on the IBM PC, people started to develop software to make it easier to create these animations. And with the advent of the ANSI standard, you could also introduce colors, do other sort of modifications. In 1986, Ian Davis released a program called The Draw. And this was very powerful. Previous to that, there was a program called ANSI Draw. It's very limiting and challenging to use. So this really sparked a new generation of artists, of ANSI artists. Just like with the radio teletype, people found ways to exchange this ANSI art. They would use message networks on bulletin boards, such as WWIV-net, FidoNet, networks such as that. These are just a couple examples. I've mentioned ASCII and ANSI. These are all different coding standards. Not everybody used the ASCII standard, or they used modifications or supersets of the ASCII standard. The Atari 400-800 used their own standard here that you can see. And they were able to achieve their own kind of Atari animations here. They called them break animations. I spoke with Tom D'Ambrosio, and he said that the break animation term came about because people would say, hey, I'm going to take a break, take a look at this animation I created. The Hacula bat. And this is probably a little bit faster than it would actually display on a standard modem connection. So it just depends. Let's see if he makes it in. He has. Okay. Also, the Commodore PET and the C64, they had their own proprietary standard. It was not compatible with ASCII. So if you were to call into a Commodore PET BBS, it wouldn't display properly. You would basically see gibberish and vice versa, unless they were emulating that character, the correct character set. But by default, if you were to call out, you wouldn't see the correct characters. They had a shifted set that you can see here, so you could actually choose 2 different character sets built into the system. I don't know. I didn't have a Commodore 64, but I know that eventually, like the Mac even emulated ANSI eventually, so I'm sure that they did. This is an example of a PET ski. That's what they called their Commodore 64 art. This is the Amiga character set. It's slightly different than the IBM PC character set, but it's using the ASCII. First 128 characters here are based on ASCII, so these could all communicate the same way. They're talking the same language. So really the only difference here is the characters look a little different as far as the way the C and the D are rendered, but the extended characters down below are very different. So in an ANSI, if it was using these block characters here or these shaded characters here, they wouldn't appear to be correct from the Amiga by default. Today we're using Unicode. You can see it has a lot more options as far as characters go to select from. People are utilizing Unicode. There's a huge scene in Japan on Nichanaru 2-channel BBS that does really amazing work with the katakana and hiragana scripts. It's really amazing stuff. Text demos can, the demos that are created on the computers, they can actually modify the character sets as well. So you have, kind of an unlimited number of options. That got ahead of me there. Okay. Well, that displayed on here, but basically this is an example of ANSI art. This was created in 1980, or actually 1990, by myself and a friend named Grim. This is a Louder Than Bombs ANSI for a BBS in Southern California. Aces of ANSI Art is the first documented team of text mode artists to exist as far as it goes. A year later, several of those members, including myself, split off to form ACID, or ANSI Creators in Demand. And soon after, very soon after, came ICE and many other groups. Amiga ASCII artists also formed into groups in '92. Groups such as ART and Upper Class, and hundreds followed. This is a really great ANSI. This is one of the first long scrollers. This is many, many lines long. This right here is the 80 by 25 window that you'd see. So you'd see this much, and then it would scroll down very slowly at 2400 baud. This is another ANSI animation for The Bog by Tracer and Jed. Well, let's try that again. I agree. Yeah, let's try 9600. It's not outputting. Lovely. All right, my computer's not liking me. Okay. Yeah, it's super pissed. Okay. No. Might have to restart. It's not inspiring me right now. Yeah, I have actually a couple videos and it's not displaying them. Okay. Yeah, PowerPoint and video, always problems. Yeah. Thank you. All right, I'm going to restart. Can reboot faster than this. But anyways, I guess while this is rebooting, are there any questions? I was about 14 when I first started acid. Actually, that's the typical age, right, for most people when they start BBSing, I thought. Or at least the people that I was interacting with, that was a pretty common age for when they started to get involved with BBSing.
What were some of your influences at the time? What got you started in it? One of the originators, or at least as far as...
One of the inspirations for me was an artist called Ebony Eyes, who is documented in Jason Scott's BBS documentary. She was one of the early, really great, talented ANSI artists. Also the people in Aces of ANSI Art.
Things like New York City subway art and stuff come to mind.
Maybe not directly, but you know, I definitely am a fan of that style of artwork, and you start to see a lot of that urban style of artwork reflected in ANSI, especially as the styles develop over time. They become more and more complex. So there is a lot of kind of graffiti style ANSI art out there.
Also, the process of drawing a long scroller, where you can only...
It's kind of like a subway. Yeah.
It's kind of like painting a subway car on its side, because you can only see a certain section of it while you're drawing it, and you have to step
Just
back.
the strongest parallel I can think of.
Yeah.
I wondered if...
Especially there's a limitation of 16 colors. So there's really kind of really primary colors that you have to work with within ANSI art.
You ever make your own font?
What do you mean by font? Which type of font?
Like you make your own character set?
I've modified the DOS character sets, yeah. For like custom DOS utilities and such. View, one of the earlier versions of Acid View, modified the character set as well. All right, so we're just going to, unfortunately, have to skip through that video.
Is there any kind of compression over VBS or straight text?
Yeah, a lot of modems supported hardware compression, like MNP. So if the two modems both had the same type of compression supported, it would actually display it slightly faster. You'd get some speed or some time savings there. All right, let's see if it'll, so let me move past it. Okay, I'm going to skip that and go on to this. This is just a still screenshot from an ANSI animation that was very long by Amroth. It was actually a coded PC animation, which is kind of a term that was coined for ANSI animations. I highly recommend downloading this. You can go to like artscene.textfiles.com or pick up the Dark Domain DVD and check this out. It's pretty amazing. This right here is called a collection of Amiga ASCII art. This is how Amiga ASCII artists started to distribute their work. They called it a collie, so this is just a short excerpt of the top of that collection. And so basically they would have a logo or a picture or a face of some sort created with the Amiga character set, and then have a break line, the credits, the name of it, and carry on like that. And these would go on for hundreds of lines. Eventually, we started to see these really complex text mode demos. This is an earlier screenshot of one. This is a literal screenshot. You can see how the thing kind of bows right here. So this is a true screenshot. This one I want to show later because I don't trust PowerPoint. This is the Starport text mode BBS trope. So they're advertising their BBS. This file originally was very small, it's maybe a couple kilobytes at most. And this does modify the character set at the very bottom. It modifies the character set for a scrolling effect that changes when it goes from right to left. And this also modifies the character set. This probably is one of the most complex text mode demos, in my opinion, as far as taking advantage of the IBM PC text mode. It actually does vectors, 3D vectors in text mode. The text mode demo concept is confined to the PC realm, but you also do see them. This is an Amiga ASCII demo, so they do exist on the Amiga. This is in a world of ASCII. It's a screenshot from that. Has a little rotating three-dimensional cube, and then the Amiga-style ASCII art face in the foreground, while that rotates in the background. There's not really any animation per se on the Commodore 64, but there are kind of art packs with music in the background. So they'll show different Petsky CG art and then have the music play. There's a lot of different art communities. As I mentioned before, there's Channel 2 or Nichanaru, which is the Japanese ASCII scene. There's the standard US ASCII, pure hardcore ASCII, where they only use the 7-bit ASCII, none of the extended characters on alt ASCII art news groups. There's Amiga and PC scenes that kind of identify their own unique character sets. And so this is, let me go right back here. I mentioned that the Amiga and the PC ASCII scenes kind of have their own styles. So this is a PC style. And so for shading, they use a lot of the dollar signs, percentage signs here. The IBM PC line, the logo, it says Hacienda right there in the lower right corner. And then this is the Amiga style. And this is, this is one of my favorite pieces. This is a very much a graffiti piece. It says The Yard. I don't know if any of you can make that out. It'll take a while to look at it. Once it comes to you, you're like, this is pretty amazing. But you know, that's a T-H-E, yard. And they kind of tend to kind of start with one character and then modify it and make each one look kind of similar but different. It's a really popular style. So this is a colorized Amiga ASCII. Let's see if this works. It's not as bad. This is a scrolling ANSI, and so the colors are way off. The palette's really screwed up. But that's kind of how a BBS would display an ANSI in an 25 window. Before I go on and show some of the ASCII demos, just want to take another break, see if there's any questions. Nothing? What's up? Okay, what's up?
What's like the time frame, or how long does it take to make like an animation? Like how long do you, if you're going to sit down and make one, how long do you expect to work on it?
I would imagine it just really depends. The ANSI animations that you saw earlier, well, I'll have to show you another one, but Hotter Than Bombs one was pretty simplistic. The one that was crashing was for the bog, and that was literally drawn frame by frame in ANSI, and it takes a long time just to draw an ANSI, a single frame. And so these were, each frame is drawn, or each portion of the frame that's modified is drawn by hand. Whereas with the demos that I'm about to show you, they're constructed in the similar fashion as a regular demo and then rendered out to ASCII. using ASCII character sets.
What do you think about the programs that they use where they have a picture and they'll convert it to ASCII, where they almost have an
Right.
ASCII character for
ASCII,
each pixel?
Sure,
That
ASCII art-
seems like they're cheating.
Yeah, that's pretty much the common consensus, is that they're cheating. There's like an ASCII Babes website that you can go to, and you can see Sarah Michelle Gellar or whoever from X-Files, whatever her name is, and they have it converted into ASCII. Yeah, it's not done, there's no human element involved to that. It's just a program routine converts it to a text file. The ASCII scene does consider that to be cheating. So I guess the answer is yes. People do that. Some people have tried to do that within the ASCII scenes and then clean it up a little bit, because usually what it produces are, if you're trying to do it in an actual 80 width, 80 columns wide format, it produces undesirable results. So you'd have to actually go through and clean that up a lot, unless you're blowing it out to something like this and then shrinking down the font size in HTML, which you might as well just have the JPEG at that point.
You should have a contest to see if they can do it in like a 4x4 block.
Right. There was actually there was an artist named Terminator 2 in the ANSI scene who would try and accomplish ANSI art as small as possible, make it identifiable as small as possible, rather than these huge blown out long scrollers. So there was also a couple different fields of thought there as well. So I'm kind of blinded by that, so I can't see if you're raising your hand. Is that it? Okay. All right, so this is the Starport text mode demo that I wanted to show. And maybe it'll show. So this is playing, I believe, FM music, ad-lib style music, and then it's doing this right here, where it's actually has a modified character set to show you this scroller that modifies from right to left, the perspective. And this is Textra. We'll see if this plays. Maybe not. All right. Yeah, the artists, it looks like they didn't have any ANSI artists there. Okay, we'll go with this one. Try one more time. No love. This is a text mode demo, which is very ANSI-like looking. They're relying upon almost exclusively the block characters here. Just blocks, half blocks, kind of simulating anti-aliasing as well. They're using the white and the gray and darker. This is an executable, yeah. Yeah, this is not coded, you know, frame by frame or anything. This is not drawn out frame by frame or anything like that. Hand drawn. This is Bolognese by Alpha Design. Particular person who coded this bright light, he seems to lives in Finland and he attends assembly, which is one of the largest demo parties in the world, and he tends to sweep half of the competitions every year. I've seen him get on stage about 4 times for awards. This is Mr. T, everybody knows. The artist who did this Mr. T wanted to make this a scroller and then say, I pity the fool who doesn't vote for this text mode demo. He didn't have time. All right, I'm going to see if I can drop this down. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. Let's go with this one. There's an annual event called TMDC, which is the text mode demo competition. So it's an online competition. You don't have to actually show up anywhere to enter, and you can submit review their guidelines and submit something if you're interested in this form of art. And so you can see that they, instead of using the solid block style here, they're using a lot of shading. It doesn't look quite as smooth, but they're able to simulate more colors than the 16 colors that are limited within ANSI or the PC text mode.
Decelerating.
Forward gravity.
Slow. Proceed with the operation. Roger. 30 seconds.
Position 42 north, 58 minutes. 59 minutes, 43
I have
north.
no idea.
Locking and lock.
Yeah, it doesn't always translate,
Forward
like I said,
gravity.
through a conversion.
Slow.
Pretty much. It's a little scroller. I'm assuming that's Bruce Lee. Yeah, those are just computer conversions, no cleaning up. I think I have maybe two more. This was the winner at the 2004 text mode demo competition. Oh, amazing. This is created by the Trailer Park Demo Group. So you can see that the coders here took a little bit more care in the choices for coder palette here. They're a lot more pleasing to the eye to look at than some of the others. All right.
Anybody ever do it without using the block characters?
Yeah. In fact, this next one is using more ASCII characters than shaded characters. This is Signal to Droids. Northern Dragons are out there. Well, I know there's a few, but that's the only text mode one that I'm aware of. This is Signal to Droids by Northern Dragons. Probably, yeah. Okay, let's see. I just want to humor myself and see if I can get this to work here now. No, probably not, but bog. Yeah, let's try it. This is what it should have looked like in PowerPoint. This is the bog ANSI. This was released in the early 90s for a BBS bog. And like I said, each of these were drawn one frame at a time. That's for pissing in the bog. So that's an example of an ANSI animation. It's one of my favorites. It's kind of funny. That concludes most of the show. Again, all of them can be downloaded online. You can go to sites such as artscene.textfiles.com if you'd like to find more about these. I also have a DVD for $10 that has all of these ANSI animations, ANSIs and ASCIIs, dating back, all the way from the 80s up until 2004, all collected on a single DVD. A lot of these were entered in competitions. For those who aren't aware, there's a block party competition that's happening tonight at midnight where a lot of coders, artists, and musicians are going to be presenting this stuff. So I encourage you all to show up at midnight if you like this kind of stuff and you want to see more of these animations and music and creative things produced from the demo scene. And that's about it. Is there any other questions? Yeah?
80 by 50 and 80 by 25 have different, 80 by 50 and 80 by 25 always had different aspect ratios.
Right.
Did you have a preference? Does the scene have a preference? 80 by 50 always seemed better. It was
80 by 50,
1:1.
right? You can do more detail. I've always preferred 80 by 25 because that's what I grew up with and started with. It seemed like there was a small segment of the European scene. I have a couple of friends that are Finnish that are really into 80 by 25 ANSIs. They're more compressed looking, but I prefer the 80 by 25 style. Oh, here's the Dark Domain DVDs.
On the PC and 80 by 25 to meet up together.
Right. On an IBM PC in 80 by 25, if you're trying to do the ASCII line art style, we're using slashes, backslashes, and pipes and such. The slashes won't meet up with each other, whereas they would in 80 by 50 on a DOS machine. In the Amiga, they do connect because the character set's just slightly different by a few pixels. And so that's why an Amiga ASCII artist always prefers that their ASCII is viewed on an Amiga platform or Amiga emulator. Okay, well, thank you very much for showing up.